Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Dr. Tariq RYK. Today our topic is about the cell physiology. Cell physiology means about the function of the cell. As we know, cell is the smallest unit of life, and cell is the basic unit of life. Cell is the only small thing, living thing in the earth, and cell can exist independently, and cell perform from the pre-existing cells. Cell is necessary for the life because cell perform all basic and necessary function for the living needs. Cell can secrete hormones such as endocrine gland. Cell can secrete regular chemicals such as exocrine glands, and cell also secrete other chemicals in the emergency condition. Let's start. Cell is the smallest unit of life. Cell is the smallest living thing. Cell can exist independently. Cell originate from the pre-existing living cells. And about parts of the cell and their function, let's start from the cell membrane. Cell membrane is a outer thin membrane in the kingdom Animalia, and it is the outer jelly-like structure that surround the cytoplasm of the cell and protect it from the extracellular environment. Structure or composition of the cell membrane composed of the lipids, proteins and carbohydrates. Let's start from the lipids. Lipids present in a bilayer. They are fluid like bilayer. Lipids are basically phospholipids. They are composed of the glycerol backbone, hydrophilic head, and the two fatty acids. Hydrophobic tail is formed from the two fatty acids. Head is formed from the glycerol backbone of the phospholipids, and head is the hydrophilic and polar, and the tail is hydrophobic and it made up of two fatty acids. The two fatty acids face each other and form the lipid bilayer. Lipid soluble substances. The small gases and the steroid hormones are lipid soluble. Gases such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and steroid hormones, they cross cell membrane by dissolving in the lipid bilayer. They can't pass through the water. And other is the water soluble substances such as small ions like hydrogen like hydrogen, sodium, chloride, water, glucose. They pass through the water filled protein channels and pores by the help of carrier proteins. What are proteins part? Protein part may be integral proteins and the peripheral proteins. Integral proteins are those proteins that span or pass through the cell membrane, or they are ensured or embedded in the membrane by the hydrophobic interactions of the phospholipids. Transmembrane proteins, they span through the cell membrane completely, such as ion channels, transport proteins and receptors, and also guanine 5 triphosphate binding proteins. Other is the peripheral proteins. One is the integral and other is peripheral proteins. Integral proteins are those that span through the cell membrane. They are also known as the transmembrane proteins. They may be one pass, they pass only one time, and other are maybe multi-pass, they pass many times, and these proteins are very long transmembrane proteins. The second protein is the peripheral proteins. They loosely attach to the cell membrane by the electrostatic interactions. They may be the outer surface and inner surface of the cell membrane on the integral proteins. They are not immediate in the cell membrane and they are not covalently bonded by the cell membrane components. See the structure of the cell membrane. This is the animal cell membrane. These are the globular proteins. These are enzymes. These are glycoproteins. These are the combination of carbohydrates and the proteins make it glycoproteins. These are the carbohydrates. These are the glycolipids. These are the combination of the carbohydrates and the lipids. These are the cholesterol, these are phospholipids, these are the integral proteins. You can see integral proteins pass through the cell membrane by the lipid bilayer. These are the peripheral proteins present on the one surface of the cell membrane. These are channel proteins. These are also transmembrane proteins are the integral proteins. Next is the intracellular connection of the cell. How cell intercollect? They may by the tight junction or by the desmosin junctions. The tight junctions also known as the zonula occludens. They are attached between the cells. This is the attachment between two cells. In intercellular pathway for the solutes, they make pathway or way for the solutes to pass through one cell to another cell. They are tight because they are impermeable in the renal distal tubules. They may be the leaky in they are permeable in the proximal renal tubules and gallbladder. The tight junctions are of two types, may be tight and the leaky channel. The tight present in the renal distal tubule they are impermeable, and the leaky channels they are present in the renal proximal tubules and gallbladder, they are permeable. Other is a gap junction. One is the tight junction and other is gap junction. In gap junctions there are attachment between the cells and they permit intercellular communications. They communicate between two cells to exchange their contents. It means they permit current flow and the electrical coupling between myocardial cells. What is transport system across the cell membrane? Transport system, it may be simple diffusion or facilitated diffusion, active transport, and the primary and secondary active transport. These are the simple diffusion as a passive transport. Characteristics of the simple diffusion: it is carrier-mediated. I mean it is carrier-mediated. It helped by the carrier proteins. The it is about the down and electrochemical unit. It is a simple diffusion from the higher concentration to the lower concentration without the use of the energy. It is passive. It's mean in this we have no need of the energy for this because the particles or molecules go from higher concentration to the lower concentration. This is the passive. Formula for the simple diffusion: J equal to minus PA multiply C1 minus C2. In this, J is the flux or diffusion and P permeability and the A area, C1 concentration 1 and the C2 concentration 2 of the solutes. What about the minus sign in the equation? Minus sign mean the direction of the flow from the high to low concentration. It indicate negative sign. In this, the unit used alternately may be milliliter or centimeter murabba. Centimeter. In this, 1 milliliter is equal to the 1 centimeter power 3. What is the active and passive transport? You can see the transport. The right one is the passive transport and left one is the active transport. In the passive transport, in this you can see the sodium and the oxygen, they are going in a one direction. This is passive transport as diffusion from the areas of the higher concentration to the area of the low concentration. It is clear. And other is a active transport. In this, the both the molecules go in different directions. In this, potassium go into the inside of cell and the sodium go outside of cell. In this, the sodium go from high concentration to low concentration, provide energy from the potassium to high concentration to the low. The sodium is more inside and the potassium is more inside. Also the sodium go out in each pump, sodium potassium pump, 3 sodium go out and the 2 potassium go inside. This is against the electrochemical gradient. Permeability of the simple diffusion. Formula for permeability is P equal to J over area multiply C1 minus C2. The unit for permeability is centimeter per second. Permeability basically is the ease that describes that solute diffuse through a membrane. The permeability depends on the characteristics of the solutes and the characteristics of the membrane, and such as the thickness of the membrane, thinness of the membrane. Solutes may be negative charge, positive charge, and its size and shape also. Factors that cause increase in the permeability: high oil or water partition coefficient of the solutes. If the high coefficient, it cause permeability to increase. The low radius, low size of the solute also cause increase in the permeability. And also the low membrane thickness, if membrane is thin, the particles can easily cross the cell membrane. And second is the facilitated diffusion. In facilitated mean, in this something provides facility for the transport. In this there are carrier protein that help in the facilitation. It is also downhill. It is passive because there is no use of energy. It is more rapid than the simple diffusion because in this the carrier proteins help to pass the particles. It also exhibit the properties such as stereospecificity and the saturation and the competition. The two solutes compete with each other. The third type is the active transport. It is primary active transport and the secondary active transport. Primary active transport, it is against the concentration. I mean, the solutes go from the low concentration to the high concentration. It is uphill, and in this the energy is used in the form of the ATP. In this, the direct input of the metabolic energy in the form of the ATP is used. The carrier mediated, it also have the properties stereospecificity, saturation, and the competition. Example of the primary active transport: the sodium potassium ATP is a sodium potassium pump. In each pump, 3 sodium go outside and the 2 potassium go inside of the cell. The downhill movement of the molecules need energy, and energy is derived from the terminal phosphate bond of the ATP. Inhibitor for the sodium potassium pump is the cardiac glycoside drugs such as oabican and the digitalis. And second example is the calcium ATP or calcium pump. It is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum and the cell membrane. It is also the downhill against its concentration. The sarcoplasmic reticulum and the endoplasmic reticulum calcium ATP is known as the silica. And the third example is of the active transport is the hydrogen potassium ATPase या proton pump. It is present in the gastric platelet cells and also renal alpha intercalated cells. They transport they transport hydrogen into the lumen of the stomach and also in the renal tubules against its electrochemical gradient. Its inhibitors are the omeprazole. Omeprazole is the inhibitor for the proton pump. The last active type is secondary active transport. It is coupled, mean in this transport many more than one solutes are coupled. In mean here are 2 or 3 molecules are coupled. In this, the one molecules go downhill, such as sodium most commonly go downhill against, and other it provides energy for the other solutes that go uphill. energy indirectly from the sodium gradient. In this, the second reactive transport, the sodium gradient provide energy, and it inhibited by the inhibition of the sodium potassium pump and sodium potassium ATPase. Types of transport in the secondary reactive transport is the co-transport or symport. In this, the solutes move in the same direction. Examples such as sodium glucose, both go to the same direction. In this, small intestine, renal proximal tubules, glucose go uphill and the sodium go downhill. Downhill movement of sodium provides energy for the uphill movement of the glucose, because glucose is more stored in the cells and it go very free in the blood by the use of energy derived from the sodium. And second example is the sodium potassium chloride ATPase. It is present in the renal thick ascending limb of Henle. And second type is the antiport, counterport, or the exchange. In this, one solutes go other direction and other go opposite direction. In this, the solutes move opposite directions. Example are the sodium calcium exchange and sodium hydrogen exchange. And in this, the sodium always go downhill and the calcium go uphill. So our today topic is finished. If you have any confusion, any question, any query, you can make comment